phrases into the American vernacular. Ground Zero, Al-Qaeda, Connect the Dots, and others became commonplace practically overnight. In the years that followed, one new phrase dominated advertising space and the public's attention at train stations, airports, sporting venues, and more. It reflected the commitment Americans made in the hours and days after the attack to work together to prevent the next major attack, a mutual pledge to remain vigilant for threats to the homeland. If you see something, say something. No phrase better captures the critical role that the American public plays in reporting suspicious activity to law enforcement. See something, say something underscores the value of efficient and effective information sharing. The public shares information with the authorities, who subsequently analyze, collaborate, and respond to potential terrorist threats. This valuable phrase was created by the New York Metropolitan Transportation Authority, the MTA, and they continue to dedicate resources to promote this campaign and share the trademark with DHS and other entities. Today, just over 16 years after the terrorist attacks of 9/11, this subcommittee is meeting to review the progress made in ensuring DHS and other law enforcement agencies are working together to evaluate tips and leads provided by the public. The National Suspicious Activity Reporting Initiative, NSI, is a joint effort by DHS and FBI, which allows state and local partners to share information that they receive from the public and send to our federal partners for further investigation. It is an integral part of the Homeland Security landscape, but of course it is reliant on an engaged public and sustained cooperation and support between all levels of law enforcement. The witnesses appearing with us today represent each level of this partnership. Each will speak to the value of the programs like the NSI provide at the federal, state, and local level, as well as the challenges of educating the public about the threats we face as a nation and how best to effectively work together. These issues are often in the background of our busy lives, and they are frequently overlooked. However, nearly all terrorist incidents, from attacks such as 9/11 to the more recent attacks such as the San Bernardino shooting to the Boston Marathon bombing, among many more in between, highlight issues with public reporting or ongoing challenges with interagency cooperation. If you see something, say something has not only been a clever reminder for travelers to keep their eyes open, but it truly reflects some of the most important lessons learned after the 2001 attacks. The public must remain vigilant and determined to report possible threats to our nation. Federal, state, and local departments and agencies responsible for keeping people safe must work together. I'm therefore pleased to welcome our witnesses to today's hearing. I look forward to their testimony. And now I thank the recognize the gentlelady from New York, the ranking member of the subcommittee, Ms. Rice.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding this hearing, and thank you to the witnesses for coming to testify today. I'd also like to take a moment to extend our thoughts and prayers to everyone in Texas and Florida and everywhere that were affected by Hurricanes Harvey and Irma. Chairman King and I know all too well that these what they are going through right now and the long road to recovery that lies ahead. And I think I can speak for the chairman when I say that we will support those efforts in any way that we can. As we all know, Monday marked 16 years since the terrorist attacks on 9/11. We often say that we cannot and will not allow terrorists to change our way of life or change who we are, and that's true. We will never allow terrorists to make us betray the values that bind us together as Americans, and we won't allow terrorism to make us live in fear. But I think we all recognize that the 9/11 attacks did change us in a lot of ways. Our government has changed. It has become more centralized and more interconnected in order to prepare for, prevent, and respond to acts of terrorism. And we have changed, all of us. We have become more aware of the threat. We don't live in fear. We don't let the threat keep us from living our lives, but we know to be alert. We know suspicious activity when we see it. This hearing is an opportunity to look at some of those changes in government and in the public and have a conversation about the evolution in the current state of suspicious activity reporting, or SARS. Our SAR programs were established to help facilitate the process of sharing terrorism-related suspicious activity reporting with the state and local law enforcement. These programs require education and training, and they require us to strike the right balance. Suspicious activity reporting efforts, including DHS's If You See Something, Say Something campaign and the nationwide Suspicious Activity Reporting Initiative, help to raise public awareness and they're necessary tools to detect, deter, and combat terrorism in the homeland. The success of each of these programs requires continuous promotion and active participation by all of our Homeland Security partners, not only law enforcement at all levels, but also educators, spiritual leaders, neighbors, and our nationwide community as a whole. Unfortunately, within next year's budget for NSI, funding for SARS is said to be approximately $400,000, down from an approximately $2 million annual budget at the time of its creation in 2007. It's important that we maintain an adequate level of funding, resources, and personnel dedicated to SAR efforts in order to limit the risk that terrorism poses to U.S. interests at home and abroad. As new emerging and evolving threats continue to test our resolve, we must also continue relying on the public to play an important role by notifying law enforcement when someone or something poses a potential threat. We must also acknowledge that many civil liberties and privacy advocates have expressed discontent with SARS over the years, as some reporting has been improperly used to help fuel fear and paranoia. Consequently, some have advocated for greater measures of accountability over law enforcement activity, which I support. I sincerely hope that with this hearing we can gain a better understanding of all the resources necessary for us to continue protecting the homeland through suspicious activity reporting. We must remain vigilant, we must continue to work together and implement strong security measures and guidelines to continue quality, real-time information sharing environments. Our committee welcomes the opportunity to engage in that process, and I look forward to hearing our witnesses' priorities and recommendations as we look to the future of our information sharing and counterterrorism efforts. With that, I yield back.
Thank you, Kathleen. We're pleased to have a very distinguished panel of witnesses before us today on this vital topic. All the witnesses are reminded that written testimony will be submitted for the record. Excuse me. Our first witness is Mr. Robin Taylor, the Acting Deputy Secretary of Intelligence Operations at DHS. Mr. Taylor joined the DHS Office of Intelligence and Analysis after more than 25 years excuse me, with the Maryland State Police, retiring at the rank of captain. This included time spent leading MSP's Criminal Intelligence Division and the Maryland Coordination and Analysis Center. During his service with INA, he has served as the Senior Advisor for Law Enforcement and as the Director for INA's Field Operations Division. He was named Acting Deputy Undersecretary for Intelligence Operations in May 2017. He holds a bachelor's degree in political science and master's degrees in management, public administration, and business administration. He is a graduate of the FBI National Academy and the Harvard University National Preparedness Leadership Initiative. He is currently working on his third master's degree in strategic intelligence at the National Intelligence University in Washington, D.C. I think you left us all behind with that educational background. Certainly for me and Kathleen, you're way ahead of us anyway. And I recognize Mr. Taylor for his testimony. Thank you.
Good morning, Chairman King, Ranking Member Rice, and members of the committee. Thank you very much for the invitation today to speak before you. With regard to this important subject, the National Suspicious Activity Reporting Initiative, or NSI, alongside of my esteemed colleagues from state and local law enforcement, it is truly an honor to be here. The Department of Homeland Security and Office of Intelligence and Analysis is proud to serve as the executive agent for the NSI program and oversee the Program Management Office since 2012. Over the last 5 years, we have worked diligently alongside of our federal, state, and local partners to enhance information sharing in order to protect our communities. NSI recognizes the vital role law enforcement plays in keeping our communities safe. To that effect, we at DHS have strived to provide our partners with the tools they need to ensure great information sharing regarding threats within and to our communities. It is a core mission of the department, and it is rooted in INA's mission statement to equip the Homeland Security enterprise with timely intelligence and information it needs to keep the homeland safe, secure, and resilient. As you know, NSI was created to fill a void in criminal intelligence information sharing with a method or platform that would enhance efficiency, effectiveness, and accuracy, while respecting the critical need to protect privacy, civil rights, and civil liberties of the American people. With this in mind, the program must balance the need for public safety with the need to safeguard our integrity and our way of life, while maintaining public confidence in our law enforcement officers and their institutions. We have worked hard to collaborate with our partners across the public safety spectrum to do just that, and we endeavor to continue to make improvements to the system and the network that forms the NSI framework. Over the past 5 years, we have learned a great deal as we work across the country with both large and small law enforcement agencies and the National Network of Fusion Centers. We continue to improve strategic messaging and marketing through initiatives such as the See Something, Say Something campaign. We have also learned a great deal by participating in a wide variety of independent state, local, private industry, and nonprofit organizations' initiatives, all of which add local emphasis to our national effort. Moving forward, we continue to look for ways to improve our approach, not just for information sharing related to criminal intelligence threat information, but also to the overall process for gathering, vetting, and validating the information against a set of approved and established NSI functional standards. To date, we have seen more than 100,000 SARS submissions since 2010, which have led to the initiation or enhancement of approximately 1,200 federal investigations. In addition to these SARs, we have helped to establish more than 1,100 enhancements to the terrorism watch list, again demonstrating the value this program brings to our efforts to enhance security at the homeland. However, I think the more significant return on investment is seen through the lens of our state and local partners with me today and the value that they place on the information that is collected and shared throughout the NSI. And while there's more work to be done, I look forward to hearing their comments related to how it impacts their communities. In conclusion, let me highlight that no one agency or organization can accomplish the mission of keeping America safe alone. It's a shared responsibility. No one person or no organization or program can do everything necessary to prevent a terrorist attack or other crimes of violence. But when we work together, we share information and utilize common tools and collaborative programs such as the NSI, we can and we do make a difference. Thank you again for the opportunity to be here today. I will submit the remainder of my comments for the record. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Teller, for your testimony. Our second witness is Rick Fuentes, Superintendent of the New Jersey State Police. Superintendent Fuentes enlisted in the State Police in January 1978. He was a supervisor with the Joint Terrorism Task Force, Narcotics Units, and the Street Gang Unit. Prior to being named acting superintendent, he was assigned as the chief of the Intelligence Bureau. He earned a Bachelor of Science from Kean College in New Jersey in 1977, a Master of Arts in Criminal Justice from John Jay College of Criminal Justice, New York in 1992, and a Doctorate of Philosophy in Criminal Justice from City University of New York in 1998. In 2006, Colonel Fuentes was appointed to a 3-year term as General Chair of the State and Provincial Division of the International Association of Chiefs of Police. He is a member of the U.S. Attorney General's Global Advisory Committee, a member of the Homeland Security and Law Enforcement Partners Group of the Office of the DNI, and an appointed member of Harvard University's Executive Session on Policing and Public Safety. Superintendent Fuentes, thank you for being here today, and you're recognized for your testimony. Thank you.
And thank you, Chairman, for reading that testimony exactly as my mother wrote it. Appreciate it. Chairman King, Ranking Member Rice, and the subcommittee, I thank you for the invitation to testify on this important topic. In addition to speaking about New Jersey's participation in DHS's NSI program, I understand that this committee may be interested in some examples of information sharing initiatives in the state. I have submitted written testimony and will summarize that testimony now. We receive upwards of 1,400 SARs each year, of which approximately 30% are accepted for further investigation by the FBI. All SARs are received at our State Fusion Center, the Regional Operations and Intelligence Center called the ROC, which operates with significant financial support from the North Jersey Urban Area Security Initiative, or UASI, and DHS. The SARs are received at a desk that is staffed 24/7 by personnel from the Office of Homeland Security and Preparedness. The FBI has a right to first refusal on all SARs. The SARs that are not accepted by the FBI are investigated either by OHS&P or a local police department. None of them go unanswered. Sometimes SARs disclose other criminal activities, such as drug trafficking, fraud, or illegal weapons possession. Given the emerging pattern that we see today that radicalized individuals may take as much as 3 to 5 years to act out, it is in the interest of public safety to leverage information in state databases as it pertains to security officer registrations and firearms IDs and permits by those individuals who were subjects of an FBI Guardian investigation. This is particularly important when you view the incidents involving Omar Mateen down in Atlanta and Ahmad Khan Rahimi, who stands accused of the bombings in New York and New Jersey last year. Other databases to vet include bounty hunters, private detectives, railroad police, etc. And the Office of Homeland Security and Preparedness checks those databases upon receiving every SAR. In an effort to remain vigilant in cases where those individuals may seek to obtain a weapon, we're looking now towards engaging in a project with the FBI that allows the state to keep looking at those databases for a period of 3 to 5 years, because when the FBI accepts a SAR, it has risen to the level of reasonable articulable suspicion, which allows us to maintain an intelligence report for a period of 5 years, after which it must be expunged, and we can continue to monitor those databases. And I think that covers the period that I just mentioned for what we see in radicalized individuals acting out and over what period of time that occurs. As I pointed out, just as a SAR can disclose information indicative of terrorist behavior and pre-operational actions, it can also reveal criminal activity that affects public safety. To facilitate the disclosure and elimination of that criminal activity, the ROC hosts weekly phone calls and monthly meetings of police chiefs from more than 24 departments in the area encompassing Newark, Patterson, and Jersey City. The emphasis is on solving violent crime in those meetings. That's a relatively small surface area of the state of New Jersey that is host to more than half of the homicides and shootings in the state of New Jersey. Through the creation of the ROC Real-Time Crime Centers, which service both North and South Jersey, we absorb some of the fact-finding work that consumes a detective's post-shooting or homicide investigation and keeps them on the street. So instead of a detective having to go back to the police department to run these checks, the Real-Time Crime Center does it for them, and it keeps them pointed forward on the cases that they're involved in. Every weapon that's seized in a crime, every crime gun, is, as soon as it's submitted to our lab, it goes through a very quick process over a period of 24 to 48 hours. As so many guns are used in multiple crimes, it's important to get the lead value out of every single one of those weapons and to get that back to the police department. Leveraging information from both the New Jersey health community and law enforcement, we can now analyze and report dangerous trends in the spread of heroin, fentanyl, and other illicit drugs through our drug monitoring program. And this program has enormous potential nationwide through the use of the National Fusion Center Network. And finally, through New Jersey Cybersecurity and Communications Integration Cell, which is also located in the ROC and supervised by the Office of Homeland Security and Preparedness, we can respond to the growing threat of cyber terrorism or cyber attacks to state or local government systems, as well as assisting the private sector in this regard. We can also make those entities continually aware of potential cyber vulnerabilities in their systems. So I want to thank you, Chairman King, and your subcommittee for your attention to this subject of great importance to the continued public safety and welfare of the country, and I look forward to answering any of your questions.
Thank you, Superintendent. And even if your mother hadn't interceded, we still would have said good things about you. So.
Thank you, sir.
Maybe not as good, but, you know. Seriously, thank you for your testimony. Our next witness is Boston Police Commissioner Bill Evans. I had the pleasure of meeting and working with Commissioner Evans in the aftermath of the Boston Marathon bombing with he and his predecessor, Commissioner Davis. They did a truly outstanding job, and it's really a privilege to have you here today in the interest not just of bipartisanship, but also of New Yorkers showing unusual love for Boston and Massachusetts. I will ask Mr. Keating to formally introduce you. Representative Keating.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sure that extends to the American League as well. I want to thank all our witnesses for being here and for their leadership working with frontline responders who, as we sit here today, have mobilized to help meet the disaster needs in Texas and Florida, among other areas, and our prayers are with them and the people they're trying to assist. It's my pleasure to introduce Commissioner William Evans, and someone I've known and worked with before, even dating back to when I was a district attorney. And Commissioner Evans was appointed as the City of Boston's 41st Police Commissioner by Mayor Walsh on January 17, 2014. Following in the footsteps of his oldest brother, former Commissioner Paul Evans, Commissioner Bill Evans has risen through the ranks of the Boston Police Department as one of its most capable officers after joining the department as a patrol officer. In 1982, he rose and held the position of Civil Service Captain, the highest civil service position in the department, commanded 2 districts, has been superintendent in charge of the Bureau of Field Services, overseeing 1,800 patrol officers across the whole city, and has been responsible for strengthening community relationships, something that we saw recently with a free speech rally and the success, and congratulations on the way your department handled that. Having received a Bachelor's of Science degree, among other degrees, he's an extensive background. He has an MPA from Anna Maria College. He's a graduate of the FBI National Academy, the Police Executive Research Forum Senior Management Institute for Police, the Center for Homeland Defense and Security Naval Postgrad School, among many others. Over his 37 years with the police department, Commissioner Evans has been witness to some of the city's best and worst days, from a peaceful decampment of the Occupy Boston movement after 70 days of protest in Dewey Square in Boston, to the marathon bombing and the capture of Zhokhar Tsarnaev. He's overseen the department as it's brought crime rates to a 10-year low in 2015 and has helped plan security for special events and partnered with state and federal law enforcement successfully. A pillar of the Commissioner's strategy that has made him so successful is also a core part of suspicious activity reporting. That is community engagement. Through open dialogue, transparency, and ensuring that there's a constant interaction between his department and the people of Boston, Commissioner Evans has created the trust that is truly necessary for every police force to work effectively. I look forward, as my colleagues are, to hearing your testimony here today, and I thank you and your fellow witnesses for being here. I yield back.
Thank you, Chairman.
Commissioner Evans, you're recognized.
Okay. Chairman King, Ranking Member Rice, and members of the committee, on behalf of Mayor Walsh and myself, I want to thank you for allowing me to participate in the hearing today. My full testimony has been submitted to you for the record, and with your permission, I'd like to make a few opening remarks. As I reflect on the incidents of September 11, 2001, the importance of partnerships with law enforcement agencies, both public and private, and the public is only reaffirmed. In my 37 years with the Boston Police Department, I have seen policing strategies evolve and can state with certainty that given recent world events, police-community relations have never been more important than they are today. As the police commissioner for the city, I continue to focus on strengthening our relationship with the community through the expansion of community policing efforts. Only with continued and persistent community engagement can we build trust, leading to the increased cooperation from the community. As an officer's role as a relation builder must be ingrained from the start. For a Boston police officer, community engagement and dialogue starts in the academy. While historically police training was focused on military-style training, times have changed, and so has policing curriculum. Knowing appropriately policing tactics is important today, but so is learning to positively and reflectively engage and interact with the community we serve. While in the academy, recruit officers interact with the community partners panel, perform a week of community service, and they really do come out as community problem solvers. In addition to community interaction, the recruit curriculum focuses on procedural justice, bias-free policing, and de-escalation training. We've had many instances where we could have used deadly force, but the training has resulted in our officers not using that. After completing the academy, community engagement continues and encourages the community to see something and say something. Members of the department and community leaders participate in peace walks in the neighborhood most impacted by violence. During the summer months, the department deploys our Operation Hoodsie Cup to interact with the youth of the community and the children, again, to foster interaction with officers in the community. The department's relationship with the community is further enhanced by our strong social media presence. In the days following the Boston Marathon bombing in 2013, the department used social media to inform the public without inciting fear. Not only does the department coordinate with the community to solve crime, but coordination with our law enforcement and private partners is an integral part of our success. The department participates in Urban Shield Boston, which is a multi-agency training exercise funded by the Department of Homeland Security, designed to enhance the skills and abilities of our region's first responders, as well as those responsible for coordinating and managing large events. And I think we've seen after the Boston Marathon how effective that was in getting people to the hospital and in decreasing the amounts of death. That was all a result of the training. All Boston police officers also received training on suspicious activity and characteristics reporting, led by the members of the Boston Regional Intelligence Center, with materials provided for the National Suspicious Activity Reporting Initiative, the NSI. During this training, officers are given examples of suspicious activities and reminded of behaviors to look for suspicious activity at major public events. Department of Homeland Security analysis assigned to our BRIC are able to track suspicious activity reports, which allows them to identify trends and patterns, as well as share ideas with other officers. Because of this, we were able to break up 2 major operations on this sharing, where we had 2 individuals travel cross-country who wanted to shoot up the World Pokemon Championship. Through our partnerships with private and public, we were able to catch them and get 2 high-powered rifles before they shot that up. Just recently, we were able to intercept an MS-13 gang and take out a homicide suspect through the sharing of information with our partners. The success of the department is directly attributed to the increased trust with the community through relationship building, information sharing, and increased awareness and training. And as Congressman Keaton says, we've been able to reduce crime in our city by 38% over the last 10 years, and we decreased the amount of arrests by 51%. So we're not doing it by locking people up, we're doing it by lifting people up. In closing, from Occupy Boston to our Boston sports team victories, parades, to our free speech rally a few weeks back, without the community support and assistance, we would not have been able to keep each of these events controlled and violence-free. Police need the trust and faith of the community they serve to effectively prevent, respond, and solve crimes. That trust is built through the tireless efforts of each officer, from the recruit officer to the police commissioner, to engage people in the community one conversation at a time. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak today. I'm happy to answer any questions the committee may have.
Thank you, Commissioner. And obviously, we're all proud that you were able to secure those victory parades. We just wish you didn't have as many victory parades, but maybe we'll take care of that in the future. Thank you, Commissioner Evans, for your testimony. Our final witness is Mr. Joseph M. Flynn, the Deputy Director of Northern Virginia Regional Intelligence Center and a Lieutenant with the Fairfax County Police Department, as well as the Assistant Commander of the Criminal Intelligence Division of the Fairfax County Police Department. Lieutenant Flynn has a background in incident command management and currently assists as an instructor for crisis intervention training for first responders interacting with individuals in mental health crisis and de-escalation techniques. He has served in the U.S. Army Military Police Corps for the Military District of Washington, where he was awarded Soldier of the Year for 1989. Lieutenant Flynn has received numerous awards from the Fairfax County government and from Prince William County as he served as a volunteer paramedic. Lieutenant Flynn regularly volunteers at local youth sports groups and community boards. Lieutenant Flynn, thank you for being here today, and you're recognized for your testimony.
Chairman King, Ranking Member Rice, and members of the subcommittee, I am honored that I've been asked to represent the Northern Virginia Regional Intelligence Center as the NVRIC. I thank you for the opportunity to discuss the role and challenges faced by my Regional Fusion Center and the remaining 78 Department of Homeland Security recognized fusion centers in the United States and territories. The See Something, Send Something is a mobile application that's been used by the public as well as professionals to photograph and text criminal activity or suspicious activity to the nearest fusion centers. Once received, Fusion Center analysts must review and vet the information since activities reported by the public don't always rise to the level of criminality or the SAR standards. If the reported activity rises to the level of an SAR or crime, the analyst works it up as much as possible and then sends it to a field agent to investigate for investigative follow-up. The agents then report their findings back to the centers for analytical reporting. In Virginia, the suspicious activity reports, or SARs, come in a variety of sources such as the public, a terrorism hotline, cold fusion via the Virginia Fusion Center's website, see something, send something mobile application, law enforcement sources such as state, local, federal, and military police, as well as first responders from across Virginia who have attended the Fusion Liaison Officer or Suspicious Activity Reporting training. The reporting has assisted law enforcement to identify subjects that have begun to support terrorist activities in the Commonwealth of Virginia or individuals in criminal activities that law enforcement hadn't known about. The NIVRC, unfortunately, doesn't have the same technological abilities to interact with first responder groups and establish easy SAR reporting methods as those as the Virginia Fusion Center. The majority of SARs sent to the NIVRC are received through email or telephone calls by partner agencies. Through the dedicated work of the analysts of the NIVRC, they have provided on-site SAR training to local, federal, and military police patrol officers in Northern Virginia, and soon will expand that training to the fire and EMS professionals that serve Northern Virginia. We have also provided training to the local school resource officers of the Northern Virginia, specifically Fairfax County and Arlington County. During the tracking period of SARs by the NIVRC from October 2015 to September 2016, we have on record 292 SARs submitted. As the NIVRC began to advance their SAR training and Fusion Liaison Officer training program aggressively, from October 2016 to just this July 2017, there have been over 300 SARs reported, showing an increase of 13% of reporting compared to last year. Statements by first responders at the training have been common themed. They didn't know the indicators that can be used in an SAR. They didn't know who to contact. They don't receive feedback from Fusion Centers or the federal government on the information they submit, hence they've stopped submitting SARs. The analysts can attest that because of the training that they are starting to provide, they are receiving SARs from agencies and first responders that have never been in contact with them in the past. I am convinced that the on-site SAR training and developing a relationship between the Fusion Center analysts and the first responders will only enhance the SAR system and should produce an increase in SAR reporting. Analysts have expressed that the diverse and simple methods of SAR reporting are well received. Improvements are still needed in many areas of SAR reporting. Timeliness of reporting by first responders or having the report sent to the NIVRC can be days or even weeks after the initial contact or the observation has been observed. Technology varies from center to center. DHS and other federal law enforcement groups are constantly developing new applications that have a minimal cost or easy available training for first responders. But the private sector provides incredible applications that draw upon multiple data sources that can be molded into the center's workflows and record management systems. But many of these programs have costs that are not attainable except by the largest of agencies. Grant funding and state and local government financial investments are getting reduced, if not completely eliminated, making it difficult to maintain or support the best technology available to help manage SAR reports and secure the data. Investing funds into uniformed Fusion Center technology allows for that technology and intelligence to be accessible by numerous law enforcement agencies. Smaller agencies will be able to invest their budgets into operational materials needed, and the Fusion Center could be the regional or statewide data management and intelligence provider. The suspicious activity reporting system will only be successful when the first responder community commits to the success of the program. Just attending training for the sake of meeting a training requirement will not produce successful results and strong partnerships. This spans from the officer or the firefighter working the street to the executives and our political leaders that see the value in trusted information sharing and the suspicious activity reporting program. With your support, you will properly help fund DHS and the NSI program. State and local first responders need uniform training, data systems, and documented best practices. With DHS and Fusion Centers, such as the Northern Virginia Regional Intelligence Center, partnering to train first responders, executives, political leaders, and our citizens will continually progress forward, finding new and better ways to keep America safe. I'd like to take a moment to recognize and say thank you to all of the law enforcement, firefighters, EMTs, emergency managers, hospital staff, and our military who not only serve in Virginia and Fairfax County, but throughout our country and the world. I'm blessed to work with the most dedicated analysts and law enforcement personnel in Fairfax County, Northern Virginia, and the National Capital Region. I thank you for allowing me this opportunity to testify, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Flynn. One thing, constant theme through your testimony is for this system to work, of reporting something, and the average citizen sees something, that requires cooperation with all levels of government. And not to open up an old wound, but I remember after the Boston Marathon bombing, we had a hearing, Commissioner Davis was here, and there were questions about the extent of cooperation between the FBI and the Boston police. Has that situation improved, been rectified?
Again, Congressman, I've been here almost 4 years, and I've had nothing but outstanding cooperation between the FBI, state, and all our agencies. Through our Boston Regional Intelligence, we have daily calls with them. Hank Shaw, who's the SAC in the Boston area, anytime there's a major event, the dialogue is great. Whether it was recently the free speech, or we had tall ships come to Boston, the cooperation has been excellent. So, I don't know how it was before that, Congressman, but since I've been in this position, the information sharing, the partnership, there has been no issues whatsoever.
Mr. Fuentes, Mr. Flynn, is that your?
Sure. I think most recently, or at least in the last few years, I think the appointment of Kerry Sleeper at a very high-ranking level of the FBI, who was a state and local. He was a state police superintendent up in New England. I can tell you, having listened to all the events occurring around the world over the last last several years, domestically and internationally, that dialogue opens up almost immediately with the FBI with briefings. There's very few of us at the state and local level who have access to those telephone conversations, who aren't aware of the information almost as it's occurring and what the FBI is doing about it. And that naturally feeds through the National Fusion Center network and the network of 78 fusion centers to be able to push that information out to all levels of law enforcement within their states. So I couldn't be happier with the ability of the FBI to reach out to state and local now and get that information out.
Mr. Flynn?
Sir, I've been in my position for 13 months, and in that time, we have developed a very strong relationship with the Washington field office here in D.C. As they rotate and move personnel, we are always in contact with the next person. They're helping bridge those gaps for us so we can continue our working relationships. They've helped us with our security clearance issues, so now I can have detectives and so forth actually help with the JTTF group, and I have more of them as a resource to help them on this side of the river should anything happen in the Northern Virginia area. The best example I can tell you, sir, is during the shooting in Alexandria, in regards to Representative Scalise, it was the JTTF that actually called us to say, here's information that may be helpful to you if you could start working it on your end. So we didn't have to get in the way or bother anybody. They were actually trusting us to come to us, and we fulfilled that obligation for them. So to me, that's an example that they're actually wanting to work with us. They now believe in what we do and that we're here to work together for a common cause.
Thank you. Commissioner Evans, in your testimony, you mentioned an incident where an MS-13 accused killer was apprehended because of this system. In my own district, we've had 17 murders in roughly the last year and a half committed by MS-13. In fact, today is the one-year anniversary of 2 young girls who were actually butchered to death with machetes by MS-13. So obviously this serves a real purpose as far as going beyond terrorism. The only concern I have, the question I would have to you is, does this in any way deter you from your anti-terrorist activities or your anti-terrorism programs by going off into day-to-day crime, as violent as it may be?
It doesn't. I mean, they work together. Every day we do daily calls with all our partners, both all the local regional departments as well as state and federal. But, to us, last year we had 5 murders related to the MS-13th, 18th Street. But it coexists for the most part, Congressman. It doesn't take us from our mission.
Great.
We have an officer in the NOC here in Washington, permanently assigned here. So we continually focus on local crime as well as international events. So, it really hasn't taken us away from the focus. Like I said, recently You know, we were able to get through July 4th events, the free speech, the tall ships. We've had quite a lot. We had the Super Bowl parade in February. You know, we've had a lot of major events where we've had to focus on that threat of terrorism, but focus on the local crime. It hasn't taken away one bit of our mission to keep not only the city safe, but the region safe.
Thank you. My final question is, Mr. Taylor, you stated in your testimony you'd like NSI to do more to engage the private sector. Do you have any thoughts or ideas as to how that can be done to get the private sector more involved?
Thank you, Chairman. I believe, to start with, a lot of this starts at the grassroots level and the local level with the state and local partners that are there. They know the communities that are present, that have access to certain data, they're in certain areas that potentially could yield reporting of suspicious activity. So starting at the local level, I think, is invaluable. Next, moving up to the statewide level of a national network of fusion centers, leveraging outreach efforts that are done at that level, whether it is through the FBI system that they have with outreach to state and local partners and private sector, which is really bringing together the state and local law enforcement, the private sector communities. From a DHS perspective, we have moved forward on corporate security symposiums throughout the country, throughout 12 regions, having one at least in every region over the past year, where we bring together private sector security officers, brief them on threat, bring up the national suspicious activity reporting, and make them aware of where we stand in the country today with regard to the counterterrorism threat. That is an ongoing process, but I think the private sector piece is a vast task that all of us collectively will have to work to engage to be accomplished.
Thank you. The ranking member, Ms. Rice.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Flynn, you were talking about the need to keep, not only get people, first responders and other people trained, but to keep them engaged in the Fusion Center and the sharing of information. How would you propose that you not just make it about training and then you get the training and you do nothing with it, but you actually stay engaged and are very proactive?
Yes, ma'am. I can really only speak for my center. What my marching orders have been for my analysts is we are staying very aggressive for developing our Fusion Liaison Officer program. We are training specific officers, whether it's in certain districts within our county alone, but all of our neighboring counties, such as Arlington, Alexandria, and we're helping them stand up their programs because some of them have slightly fell behind. And once we do that and we get them trained, we meet on a monthly basis, face-to-face. There is no email, there's no online meetings. We find a location and we bring everyone together, and I ensure that they know that they have value to bring to the table. We have done a lot of outreach, a lot of partnering where I've gone out and actually knocked on the doors of agencies and said, I'm here to talk to you. I would like to let you know what we can do for you, that we should be considered a force multiplier on your benefit. And what that has done is brought more and more agencies from different disciplines, whether it's military, federal, state and local law enforcement, and then all of the analysts. And now some of the private sector companies that are involved in the analytics are starting to hear about what we're doing in Northern Virginia, and they're starting now to bring some of their resources to us so that way we can expand our communication gap. And what we're always trying to do is ensure that people understand that they're getting something from us, but we have value for what they're telling us. The luxury for me is that I only have 1,000 square miles to cover, and I can drive from anywhere in Loudoun County to Alexandria in a short amount of time, and we can host these meetings. The issue probably will be for the larger fusion centers, such as the Virginia Fusion Center, which is in Richmond. How do they make that all happen between Bristol and Colonial Beach? Or how do you go to North Carolina and have one state center that's going to be able to meet with everybody on a regular basis? It's a challenge for them that they have to find a way to identify. I have the luxury of being regional and small and having direct one-on-one contact, and I have a multitude of analysts that maintain those relationships for me and are directed to maintain it. So the other part of the program is that I find ways to bring training into the region to build those partnerships also. So I've had the Department of Homeland Security come in and give intelligence commanders courses. We're soon partnering with the NSI to put on a regional SAR class here in October, but I have the military sponsoring it for us to put up the facility so we can have the whole National Capital Region engaged. And I take that also because I chair the COG committee on intelligence also. And I've taken that same philosophy where we're trying to ensure that people understand they have value in what they're doing, and we need their information just as much as they need mine. So we try to provide the feedback on a regular basis. We try to engage one-on-one on a regular basis. And a lot of the time now we're getting the smaller agencies to call us first saying, I have something, can you help me with this? And we usually do provide that for them. So as long as my analysts maintain that one-on-one contact and that partnership and that level of trust, and those people understand that there's a level of value to what they are doing for all of us here in this room even, it keeps them engaged. And that's how I keep this program going. I keep investing in people's value.
This is my final question would be to all of you, asking you to discuss the importance of maintaining robust funding for the SAR. How important is that?
I'll start, ma'am. I think from a DHS perspective, as you mentioned earlier, the funding has, due to physical constraints, that the funding has decreased over the years of the program. And I think we can always do more with more funding. And what we have seen over the years that I've been here is why the number of SARs themselves have maybe stayed consistent as far as being reported due to tightening of budgets and personnel, et cetera, that are allocated to the program. It does impact training. It does impact that level of being able to work, whether it is through online sources or in-person training with our state and local partners that keep them up to date and refreshed. And the fiscal constraints actually definitely plays a part in that, that effort. I think it is probably more so done from a state and local effort as far as what impact they can have, because they are really the, the cops on the beat, on the ground. From us, it's more of that corporate, how are we refreshing training programs, trying to make them relevant and usable for the frontline officers. But it certainly has had an impact, I think, over the years. We would look forward to having dialogue with your staff on how to fix that going forward.
I think I agree 100%. I think that as local police agencies, we rely quite a bit on the whole idea of people see something, say something. We carry on major events in our cities, and to be able to train the public to look for suspicious activity and to train our officers, which has become key, to look when they're at these major events, whether they're at Fenway Park, where we recently did a training exercise on how to respond to an active shooter event. But we train our officers, whether it's at any of these major events, to look at anyone approaching with the whole idea of recognizing the characteristics of someone who might be carrying a bomb or who might be carrying a gun. So it's imperative that we keep the budget at the way it is, because we need the resources not only to train the public, who are our eyes and ears, but more importantly for our officers to recognize the characteristics that might intercept what happened on April 15, 2013, which was a tragedy. But we do work very closely with all our both private and non-government agencies. We have what's called the Brick Shield, where every day 1,000 of those agencies receive up-to-date real crime time information on crime trends, as well as suspicious activity surrounding Homeland Security. So, they also receive the benefit, all the agencies out there, from the training they receive from us. So not only is it the police, the public, but it's also all our private and non-government agencies who get it. So it's key in our battle to fight, the terrorist threat right now.
So the success of the SAR initiative is apparent from the number of really successful and effective investigations that has produced, as was pointed out by Mr. Taylor. However, there's an infrastructure to this that requires training, technology, the hiring of analysts, all of that feeds into a system that makes these processes more effective, and particularly as it pertains to individuals we can send out to train these Fusion Center liaison officers to report back the things that they see in their police departments. In the case of New Jersey, that's 479 full-time police departments. In the states, in the other states, there's many more than that, and that's time-consuming, and it takes personnel to do that. So I think the return on investment for the funding that's provided for this program is apparent. I hope it continues to include the funding of the UASI regions, from which at least the Fusion Center in New Jersey derives great benefits. So I would encourage that that funding level stay up or enlarge.
It's always hard to talk about finances, ma'am. I apologize. It's every day it's something in my head about the money. The reporting and receiving is very easy. Like I said, we get most of our information of our SARs through email, a PDF file, a copy of a report, because I can't access other agencies' record management systems. So I have to rely on the FLOs to send me this data. The hard part is then taking it and putting into a secure system that will hold on to it and meet the guidelines of the 28 CFR and so forth. And are we able to afford those systems to secure that data? And that's one of the challenges that we have right now is what can I affordably pay for and then maintain on a yearly basis with that subscription? So a lot of these software programs, I'm sure you're aware, can start from anywhere from $40,000 into my budget all the way up to well over $100,000, if not millions, for what we had. Again, I'm sure you're aware from the New York issues going on. So I'm trying to constantly find new ways to leverage how do we effectively spend the money and get the best value of it. I have to get rid of other programs that may work well, but we're not using them. So we no longer pay for that software. So I can go and get something else that's either a little cheaper or get something that we actually can show to our elected officials we're getting value of what you're investing into. As the superintendent stated, you know, one of the challenges for us, at least as Fairfax County, we were lucky years ago that our Board of Supervisors decided that there is value in hosting the Northern Virginia Regional Intelligence Center, and they put up all the money for the county budget pretty much. They pay for us to be there, but we still have to receive UASI grant funding. So as that money comes and goes, or they decide what we get, I have to go through the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments to get a determination, am I going to be awarded that money? And this is the first year we've been told, you're starting with zero, you have to prove to us why you're going to get that money for next year. So it's a change in because they have to, and I understand where the executives are coming from. Are they getting value for what they're investing money into? We do provide that investment every day to every agency in Northern Virginia, if not the state of Virginia, if not in the capital region. But are the executives getting the products that we are giving? Are they seeing our relationship building up and how the success stories that you're seeking, are they actually being told that that is what's happening? So there are success stories happening through the SAR program. We've been able to identify recently several things, and it's actually firefighters who are giving this information to us now. There's other people that the citizens are sending in stuff to the state of Virginia, and they send it back up to Northern Virginia, and it leads into a re-identification of an individual that maybe we weren't looking at, we stopped looking at years ago. So there are success stories. It's just a matter of, and I'm sure the panel will agree, is affordably having technology that secures it and manages it for us safely and properly, and then how do we give you a product that you could easily understand?
Thank you.
Gentleman from Texas, Mr. Hurd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And gentlemen, thank you all for being here. I just have one question, and I'll ask it of each one of you, and Mr. Taylor, have you start. But before I get to the question, I'll give you some context. I spent 9.5 years as an undercover officer in the CIA, primarily overseas. I was in the agency before 9/11. It's been pretty amazing how information sharing has improved across the federal government, and I would call that lateral sharing. The area that we have improvement is what I would call vertical sharing, and that's getting information into y'all's hands, into local law enforcement, because I think you have the most difficult challenge, and that's the lone wolf problem. And my question is, in the Orlando killer, he cased 5 locations. I believe 3 of those locations had private security. And my question is, in that scenario, are we training the private security or are the private security folks able to get and participate in the nationwide suspicious activity reporting initiative? Is their information getting into eGuardian? Who is looking at that? And so I know we're talking a lot about what the public is providing, but when you talk about private security that we have at malls and places that are highly trafficked, places that are most likely to have somebody in a car run through the public, talk to me and help me understand the kind of interaction we're having with private security. And Mr. Taylor, I'll start with you, and then gentlemen, if you all can talk about this problem unique to your area of operations, that would be helpful. Mr. Taylor.
Thank you, sir, for the question. Let me start with the training. The training is the most valuable aspect here in making sure we reach out to a whole host of people who have access, for example, the private sector, the security officers. One of the 2 methods that we at DHS and our colleagues with the FBI pursue as far as training. One is in-person training, where physically experts SMEs to go out.
So let me ask you this, Ms. Taylor: is G4, do they include when they onboard a new class of officials? Is somebody from your office or is someone talking to them about the NSI program or eGuardian?
So they could. It depends. And a lot of this, we will leverage the state and locals for some of that training. The National Suspicious Activity NSI system has a pretty robust online system for training where there are 9 hometown security modulars in there for people to go on to. It's an open website. One of those is focused on security guards, and I know Colonel Fuentes will comment on this in a second, as in order to get a security guard license in the state of New Jersey, they are required to pass that training and present that. So that is something that we have done in order to try to encourage and affect change and receive that reporting from those type of individuals.
That's really helpful with New Jersey as an example. Are there other states that follow this Jersey model that you know of, Mr. Taylor?
I'd have to go back and
Good
look
copy.
for that.
Thank you. Mr. Fuentes.
So we have a unit that's dedicated in the ROC for exactly this reason. It's called the Private Sector Outreach Unit, and as Mr. Taylor pointed out, it does involve the training of private security guards, but it extends out to infrastructure like malls, airports, general aviation airports, and to emphasize what Mr. Flynn said, fire departments and emergency medical responders often see things because of the nature of the responses that they make. So it is very, very important for those individuals to be trained up. Also of some concern, and I had alluded to this in my opening comments, is that some of these very industries have been used by people such as Omar Mateen, and I know that that's the case that you referenced in terms of becoming a security guard and some of these professions that allow people to more normally access weapons as part of their profession. A lot of the holdings of those databases lie in the states. And to go back to my comments, it's important for the states who maintain those databases to work in an enhanced integration model with the FBI and with DHS to make sure that nobody is falling through the cracks. When an investigation may cease on an individual, if a state, from the outset of sending that guardian over to the FBI, also makes note of that individual, we could actually tripwire in those databases to make sure that over the course of 5 years that we can maintain such reports, that person will not purchase a weapon.
Yeah, and look, I think the follow-up is all good. You know, I think we have so many examples, but it's that initial, you know, the initial contact with a potential lone wolf that's never come across the law enforcement's radar. And Colonel Fuentes, let me make sure I'm clear. So in the state of New Jersey, if you want to get licensed to be a security guard, part of your training is on the NSI program.
Yes, sir. They're instructed how to utilize that program.
Good copy. Thank you. Mr. Evans?
As far as, again, like I said, we have the Brick Shield program where we work with about 1,000 private and non-government agencies on these issues, on, you know, the constant threat of, you know, terrorism and whatnot. And we train up quite a bit with them. You know, we trained at Fenway Park. We trained at the TD Knott Center on suspicious activity, as well as what should happen should we have an active shooter training. We do it with all our hospitals in the area. We have constant training. All our colleges, whether it's BC, Boston University, Harvard, you know, we're always in constant dialogue. So the sharing of information, suspicious activity, and what to look out for, that's very much an ongoing dialogue. Every day there's a call, and every day there's a bulletin that go out to all of these 1,000 partners in our Brick Shield program to let them know, to train them, but also to be a partner. And as far as the nightclubs go, again, we're constant contact, constant active shooter training with them. So the training that goes between all our private and non-government is constant. The sharing of suspicious activity is constant. And I think, you know, that's something I think we take a lot of pride in on the partnerships we have, not only with all our government agencies, but with all the private clubs, colleges, hospitals, as well as our sport facilities.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. I'm not fully up to speed on everything because I'm just a regional center. What I can tell you about the state of Virginia, though, is there are levels of training that the Department of Criminal Justice Services provide to certify security officers in the state of Virginia. Depending on the level, if they're going to be armed or not, can change what they have and what are their main hours. Or how many hours they have to meet for accreditation, I'm not really sure, sir. I do not believe that the SAR program is one of their topics that they spend, especially when it's difficult for me just to get to a police academy and explain to them what the SAR program is. So I don't think it's something as security guard. The other challenges, obviously, you have is you do have the private sector, large corporate security groups that are involved with the private or with the fusion centers and ours. We do provide them FOUO information and so forth that they can use at, let's say, Springfield Town Center or Tyson's Corner. But it's the smaller ones that, you know, if they don't have to meet the DCJS standards, we may never even know who they are. So as we work with, let's say, InfraGuard and so forth and try to build up that relationship with them, we're going to try to use them as an outlet of outreach to get to those other large private sector security guard programs and so forth.
Copy. Mr. Chairman, I yield back the time I do not have.
Thank you. Typical Texan, you know. Gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Keating.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of the major points that we got after the review we did in this committee on the Boston Marathon bombing and some of the red flags. It's encouraging to hear the information sharing consistently going forward, improving. That was one of them. The other is the multiplier effect that's there as a result of the information sharing, but also getting down to the first responders at the local and regional levels, taking advantage of the numbers that are there. And with Deputy Director Flynn's comments, one of the areas that I think we really should be gearing in on is his comments regarding technology, the fact it's not uniform, the fact that it's not available, because for the cost effectiveness, that to me is a great multiplier, because you're giving those tools to directly go to the frontline level. And I'll just coordinate this with one other question. Even though lone wolves remain our greatest fear, I'm very concerned when you see attacks like the ones that occurred in Spain, the more coordinated, simultaneous attacks. I think, you know, the training, the communication, but also that technology and making it uniform could be very effective in dealing with that. What do you see for the ability to deal with these simultaneous attacks and the need for technological investment?
Sir, I'll start off on the technology side of things. There has been a complete shift and change in the use of the technology and the ability to get information, probably even within the last 12 months, if not less. With the changes of the protocols of social media companies, let's say, we basically, it's almost turning off or killing companies that used to do that kind of work, where you could buy an application, set your filters up, and boom, you could walk away, come back 2 hours later, and see who's just made the latest threat to a school or a shopping center or a law enforcement agency or the government. That's no longer there anymore. All of you at this committee and myself and the people of this panel have the same skills and abilities now as my analysts do. It's just they do it more often or are used to the common terminology on how to do the open source research, I would say. I don't like to use the word, we don't use the word monitor, because we don't monitor our citizens. We're not going to violate their civil rights. We are in compliance with the training from the Bureau of Justice. So we are adhering to those standards. So all we can do is when there's a request for a threat assessment, we just do an open source, whether through Google or anything else, to say, hey, what's out there, what's a common term, what's going on. That's the only way we can find this information that is out there on the world. The other part of it now is the development of new applications that are encrypted, that the groups and the organizations, as they learn about what we can do in law enforcement, and as we come out and we testify in the open setting or in court, they take that information and turn it into their intelligence. So, for example, Charlottesville, when the Virginia Fusion Center thought there was only going to be a couple hundred people show up, and all of a sudden 4,000 people show up, we're highly convinced now that they were using secured applications to communicate between each other, and we have no way of finding out what they're saying or what they're doing. So they'll put something on social media saying, hey, please show up here, and you might get 5 people that like it, and then these executives that are sitting with me today have to make a decision based on either history or what the Fusion Center is going to tell them and say, hey, only 5 people like this or said they're coming. They may stand up a whole agency or just set up a whole CDU deployment of 20 guys, and now they have to roll the dice of, do I get 5,000 protesters, or are I still going to get those 10, or do I get nothing? And that's the latest challenge that we have right now in law enforcement. So we try not anymore to say we don't know of any threats, because we're not going to know, because they're securely communicating with each other.
What about the possibility of these simultaneous attacks? It presents greater challenges, too, because you just don't know logistically how far away they'll be, but being able to instantly coordinate information could be so critical there. Are there any gaps or challenges you have that, resource-wise, we could be helpful with?
I think the Homeland Security, like when we talk about Urban Shield, that's the whole idea. How do you respond to several incidents happening at the same time? And I think, you know, I think we've done at least 3 of those multi-agency, and I want to go back to the Boston Marathon bombing. I think, you know, the ability for everyone to respond the way they did, and the ability of everyone knowing each other's capabilities. That's why we were able to take about 267 injured from the different trauma centers, and every one of them survived. That doesn't happen by accident. That happens by training between multi-jurisdictional agencies on several attacks in several areas. And that's why it's important to keep programs going, funded by Homeland Security, to carry on these type of operations. So if there's and we've practiced it, if there's
Well, the UASI grants, for instance,
Right.
are a great example, and you'll be happy to know, even though they're cut 25% by the administration, their budget,
Right.
House appropriations actually increasing.
Well, I appreciate it, but we practice. What if there's a bomb going off at the train station? Well, we have something going off at
Exactly.
Fenway Park, and then you have an incident on a boat. That's what Urban Shield has been able to say. So we'll say, we'll cover this, the state will cover this. So, you know, we do train up on that, and we're always worried about that.
We're
But
seeing more and more in Europe and other areas.
I agree.
And so there's no question someday we're going to be countering some of those challenges. If I could, Mr. Chairman, one question. I'm over my time. If I could have just one question that I think should be addressed, that's on the minds of many with the SAR program and things, and that's that there are active training and policies to make sure privacy rights and civil rights are protected in this. And I wanted to give you a chance publicly to explain how those things are implemented, and indeed there are there, so that people that should be aware of that. Anyone that might want to.
Sir, I think from a DHS perspective, privacy, civil rights, civil liberties, really for the NSI program, it's been a cornerstone of the program since it began. It is something that is under periodic review as far as the program, the data that is submitted, into the NSI, proper review of the functional standards, the review of those indicators, et cetera, that are indicative, reasonably indicative of terrorist operation, pre-operational planning. Those are constantly reviewed from a DHS perspective, and I would say, along with my colleagues from the FBI, it's something of utmost importance.
So, sir, I can tell you before the lights go on any of these initiatives, they're subject to legal review. And I did mention this pilot we're looking to engage in with the FBI, which focuses upon enhanced integration at the front end of Guardian investigations involving the state, and right now that's under legal review. So we subject everything to include every single report that comes out of the Fusion Center, and that's thousands upon thousands of reports every year, are subject to a privacy review, and there's actually a component within the Fusion Center that DHS mandates that takes a look. It's part of the intelligence cycle before we put information out that we make sure that it does not violate privacy interests or constitutional liberties.
Great. Thank you very much. I yield back.
Thank you, Bill. I just have one question, and it's to Superintendent Fuentes. In your statement, you mentioned about an incident in Point Pleasant, New Jersey, which seemed to start from a pretty not-so-serious matter of some person threatening to kill his dog, and how that led all the way to a terrorism indictment. If you just discuss that. And again, I think that's an example of how effective this program can be and how something that may not seem that critical turns out to be very important.
Right, so that began in Point Pleasant, involved the Point Pleasant Police Department, and really involved a domestic disturbance, a domestic situation. The police did immediate follow-up and a very diligent investigation, and during the course of that investigation, they found a copy of Inspire magazine, and particularly an article that involved the construction of a device that could be, that we're seeing are common now, a pressure cooker device in some of these instances, such as even, I think, the Rahimi incident. So I think it was the great work of that police department. It was the great work of the person who queued up the police department, which was essentially a SAR that was transmitted to the police department and ended up with actually a case being picked up by the FBI to target this individual who had plans to carry out an attack.
Similar to the device used in the Boston Marathon bombing, I believe. Right, thank you. Listen, I want to thank, Kathleen, you have any? Okay, I want to thank all of the witnesses for your testimony today. I found this extremely enlightening, extremely educational, especially coming on the first anniversary of September 11th, the 16th anniversary of September 11th, the same week. And to me, it again shows how we have to stay committed, we have to stay aware of what's happening, and this is a really vital and integral part of that. And also, the level of cooperation between the different levels of government, I think, is really very encouraging. So I thank all of you for your service. And I guess the best thing we can say is that the fact that the public may become complacent is because of the outstanding work that you're doing. So the job is to keep doing the outstanding work. At the same time, though, keep the public aware of what's happening. And that's the challenge we face today. But thank you for the great job you do. And I just advise you, the members of the subcommittee may have some additional questions for the witnesses, and we'll ask you to respond to those in writing. But pursuant to Committee Rule 7D, the hearing record will be held open for 10 days. And without objection, the subcommittee stands adjourned. Thank you very much.